Hey guys, welcome back to the Silverback Show, and this is wisdom traditions in parenting. So first and foremost, let me say this, that as I've told you before, and I will continue to say, this show is inclusive of everybody's values, or I should say everybody's religious values and practices. And I believe that all religions will benefit from the Silverback concepts. And there are wisdom traditions, and there is developing wisdom within ourselves that can be gained through multiple wisdom traditions, and that does no harm to anybody's religious beliefs. So what I mean by that is that I'm born and raised from a Polish Slavic Catholic father's side of the family and a French Canadian Catholic mother's side of the family. And I was left alone from 9 or 10 until high school, until the rest of my life actually, to find my own values, so that if I did choose Catholicism, it was something that I was choosing independent of my parental wishes and my parental demands. And I think that that is a very, very important thing to think about. And you heard me say that, to think about and to consider with our children, and that does not take away from the deep, serious belief systems that each one of us may or may not have, that we do want our children to follow while they're under our roofs. So in my family, I did go to catechism when I was very young, and I did go to church just a little bit, but my mother wasn't really a practicing churchgoer, and her parents weren't really practicing churchgoers, and my father wasn't in our life that much, and he certainly wasn't a practicing churchgoer. So Catholicism, and thus Christianity, was a huge part of my socio-cultural familial norms, but it wasn't a mandate in my home. And again, I was born into the 1962, so I was born into the heart of the California cultural revolution, where religion was turned up upon its head, and all authority in parenting was turned upside on its head. And I'm going to come full circle to turning it the other way around for everybody. But in the meantime, let's look at the child, and the child going through this all these different developmental stages where he's going to be absorbing all kinds of ideas. And unless you are following, putting your child through a very specific kind of school, for example, if you're Jewish and you want them to go to, Jewish schools from day one until they get into university, or if you're Catholic and we want them to go to Catholic school, if you're Christian, you want them to go to Christian school. This may or may not apply to you, but I want to stretch the boundaries just a little bit, because I do think that it's really, really critical that while we guide and give our values, we also have to understand the concept that I've been talking about the bow and the arrow and the force in between. And we have to talk about the nature example of the redwood seed that's as big as my thumb knuckle, that grows into a 300-foot tree that lives 3,000 years of age. And how does it do it? If we don't trust the seed that's within our child, and we don't teach that child to trust the itself, himself, herself, then we may be doing a disservice. And as regards wisdom traditions, here's what I want to propose. I want to propose that you don't become afraid when your children come home and tell you something that's shockingly different than the values that you've expressed to them. And as regards religious values, and in regards to the school systems that they're in, they're going to get hammered, and they need to be hammered in order to process this themselves. But they also, if they are raised to be strong and independent, are going to be reaching out for different ideas. They might read something by Nietzsche in school. They might read something by an existentialist in high school. They might read about nihilism. They might read about atheism. They might follow on YouTube somebody who is articulating atheism in a way that just devastates you as a parent. And all I can tell you is this, is that if you are more of a role model and less of a friend, and if you are working on yourself through your own wisdom tradition practices, then your children will be fine. More than likely, they will come back to those wisdom traditions that they grew up with if those wisdom traditions were done in a healthy way in their home. They may come back to them even if they weren't done in a healthy way in their home, but that's not the point here. One of the points that I do want to make is that childhood going into adolescence is an expansive time period. And it's also an opportunity for children to explore, as I've said, and suffer, as I've said, and learn to explore their own suffering, and learn to explore the meaning of life, and learn to be totally baffled and confused and come back and seek answers. So what I like to do is I like to think of the silverback as this, as this Buddhist monk, or this monastic priest, or whatever other religious monastery you can think of, whereby calmly, quietly, the silverback role model is just practicing his own inner work, and he's practicing his own self-awareness, and he's not confused about anything. So the less confusion you have in yourself, the more clarity your child will be able to find in himself. Having said that, I do believe that it's very, very important for all of us to explore the different wisdom traditions, because they have a great deal to teach us. And those wisdom traditions that may be most repugnant to us are worthy of our exploration too. They will teach us how to overcome our own well, I'm gonna have to start over. Someone's pounding on my door.